How you doing, man?
Good. How are you? Just in a car, like a restaurateur, running errands.
Man, I hear you. Is it still a good time?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm parked actually, so I got a little bit of time.
Okay, cool. Well, Cyrus, introduce yourself.
Cyrus Batchan with number eight hospitality. Um, Loyal schedule fly users, and I got a few spots in LA and a couple spots in Vietnam as well.
Um, Thank you, man. It's good to see you. We hadn't talked in a while. We hadn't, I guess we've never done a Zoom. I just started doing these since we last connected on the podcast. But where are you today? Are you in LA?
I'm in LA, yeah, just running some errands. I got an opening of a concept coming up here in a few weeks. I'm just running around last ditch efforts, filling needs for the kitchen and picking up equipment and all the things I got to do.
What's the new concept?
It's called Camphor. So we're a modern bistro, which with heavy French influences. A couple of Alain Ducasse alumni
Oh, all
who
right.
are running the show, and then very we don't even like to say it, but there is a small kind of Indian influence, like a maybe 3 to 5%, just because we don't want to set expectations. But the chef's idea is that they're just adding another level of like flavor and spice. We're actually importing spices directly through India through one of our chefs, one of the co-chefs, and just kind of changing everything very subtly, and we think improving it. So
Nice, man. That's awesome. Congrats.
yeah, thank you.
Um, so a new concept out there in LA. Now, y'all have been, every different parts of the country have handled this pandemic in different ways. And I haven't talked to anybody in LA for a while, but I know for a long time it was a lot of you were closed and a lot of mask mandates and all kinds of stuff. Are y'all getting to the other side of this, or what's going on?
I think we are hitting the other side. I mean, obviously the Omicron definitely, dragged everybody back to a place they didn't want to be, but it was a lot of back and forth, rightfully so, for health and welfare. Finally got to a point where I think, I want to say ever since June, when a lot of the stay-at-home order was lifted, we've been on this steady kind of just boom. And then obviously once winter came around, Omicron, definitely have seen a little bit of a slowdown across the businesses, but nothing obviously as bad as it was before. But you are dealing with, customers, contracting, some staff members contracting, and how you deal with that and navigate it. But I think like everybody else, we're on a steady kind of path forward.
Tell me about the labor issue out there. I mean, that's just such a huge issue for everybody right now. Are y'all dealing with that as well?
Oh yeah, so I didn't deal with it as much at Lock and Key. All my staff came back with the exception of two people who actually moved. But now with this new concept opening, we got front of the house decked out, the bar decked out. Back of the house is definitely challenging. And you would think with, chefs of this caliber, pre-pandemic, people would have been rushing through the door to just say, hey, I want to work with a chef who's been under the tutelage of, Mr. Ducasse as one of the great, most Michelin stars of any chef in the world. I would love to work with some people that have worked with him. That's been our biggest challenge. We're getting a lot of people who said, oh, I cooked during the pandemic at home and I want to learn how to cook, which is great from a teaching standpoint. And you sometimes can take that and turn it into talent, but you can't run a restaurant, which we're shooting, for, Michelin star and all the accolades. We can't run it off of novice talent. So that's been the challenge. And I literally was just talking to one of the other chefs, Max, and texted him something that I found. There's a restaurant out here who's offering $30 an hour for a line cook plus tips. Mind
What's
boggling. And $30 an hour. I'm like, I just don't understand how that's sustainable for a lot of these businesses. I mean, obviously, I'm not privy to what their model is, but I know the concept. I'm like, I don't see that being sustainable. That's like get people in the door, but then what do you do? Just fire them later and say, now we're back to 18, 19, 20? Because pre-pandemic, it was 15 to 18 was kind of a fair rate. Now you're at, I talked to another buddy who's opening a restaurant. He's like, we put out 18 plus tips. We didn't get a look. He's like, I went up to 23. He's like, now we're starting to get looks.
Plus tips.
Plus tips. Yeah. So they get, I mean, most everybody's cutting in the service charge model now. So cutting in the back of the house, like 3% or so.
Whew, man.
But yeah, I mean, from a operator standpoint, obviously we're already seeing inflationary pressures and all that. But sorry, somebody's calling me, but not sustainable. I don't see it being sustainable. Obviously you need with that kind of pressure, you need upward changes on all of your menu items too. And at what point is, it just become out of control, right? Are you having the $40 cocktail now?
Right. Yeah. The market will take care of this, I guess.
Right.
So what are all these? I'm curious, like, particularly in your situation where you've got chefs that have trained with this, one of the most famous chefs ever. Where do all the people that go to culinary school, like, where are they going now? They graduate like.
So we are actually getting some of that. We've got, I actually pinged the teacher over at the culinary school here in Pasadena, ICE, and she's funneling us some students. Obviously, some of those students are required to just meet minimum hours, I think around 200 to finish their programs. So we're working on that. But, again, it's culinary school versus being in the weeds on a busy Friday night at a restaurant. That takes years of experience to actually be able to manage and navigate that. So I think the balance, like we're trying to, it's like being a football coach. You're trying to put together your roster and get the right mix of like rookie talent versus like, veteran talent. But right now from the veteran talent market, it's definitely, some people just obviously left the industry. Out of California, I think it's a mix of leaving the industry and then also looking for quality of life and then just leaving the state. So I think it's probably a mix of all of those.
Well, tell me about Lock and Key. You've had just a crazy time there through the pandemic and the fires. Like, what was the story? Just kind of explain to everybody what's happened there.
Yeah, so we started, I don't know if I mentioned in one of the podcasts before, but we started with, lockdown March 15th, or we got March 17th of 2020. We actually closed on, I think, the 14th or 15th. First fire occurred from an adjoining property on the 27th, which was the night we were planning to reopen for takeout. And it snowballed into a subsequent, I think, 6 fires, 5 over the course of like at the immediate adjoining property line. And then now a 6th, which just happened months ago after we were open in the same shopping center, but on the other side. And then sprinkle in a burglary in January, like around sometime between January 6th. I think it was actually probably January 6th to January 8th. They were in there for about 2 days, stripping the place down to taking light fixtures. So at that time, I tell everybody we had 5 fires and a burglary, which was nuts. And, I got a newborn at home at the time and just kind of like trying to navigate that plus the pandemic. It's definitely was an interesting ride to say the least.
To say the least. Oh man, the resilience is out of this world, man. Your story, I mean, we had this ransomware thing the first day of the year, and I had read that story, the article, I don't know, like a few weeks prior to that. And I mean, like I was thinking about you when we were like trying to, I'm like, man, Cyrus and so many of these customers of ours, your story in particular stood out because just like one more thing after another and a newborn, all this stuff. And you figured it out though, because what do you do in this stuff is you have to, accept the things you can't change and roll your sleeves up and deal with what you got and just keep plowing ahead. And that energy and the resilience and the positivity and just the relentless work to just kind of get through stuff is like, boy, it is, you got to have it. Otherwise you're sunk. Like there's no chance.
Yeah. No, and I think, I was raised in a family, I think, where grit was very important, being able to kind of pull yourself up from your bootstraps and just keep going one more try.
Right.
And that's always been my model in business, right? It's like you solve these problems, you get knocked down, but it's not about, getting knocked down. It's about getting back up and pushing forward.
Right.
And luckily I was blessed to be, I guess, healthy, have a family around me who, and employees and everybody who believed in me. And so I kept it pushing. And a lot of the stuff still fell squarely on my shoulders. And, nobody obviously knows. Yeah, I mean, you guys just went through something similar. It's like individually as your partners, you guys probably know what that feels like. But, you bring it home to your wife and kids, they actually really don't know, right? What that pressure feels
Oh,
like,
yeah.
right? And it eats at you, but you try to be also present in the moment.
Yeah.
And everybody had challenges during this time. I just looked at it as my challenges happen to be very unique, and I handled them the best way I could. And that's the message I want to communicate to other people in the industry, but also most importantly, my son. It's what kind of person do I want you to be? What do I want you to do when it looks like things aren't going in your favor? I want you to dig deep and go harder. So
Love it, man. Yeah, that grit is huge. And the one of the things that somebody said to me early on after this attack happened was a customer. He said, "Hey, man, Will, 10% of life is what happens to you. 90% is how you deal with it."
yep,
It's a simple concept, not easy to execute on when you're in it, but it is a great measurement to just always remind yourself of and think about, I think. And I kept that really top of mind. And then the old thing, I may have even mentioned this to you before. I seem to mention it to almost everybody, is the there's a YouTube video. It's like 3 minutes long by Jocko Willink. You know who Jocko is?
yeah,
Yeah, and it's called Good. But he talks about how every time they'd run into a problem and when he was a SEAL team leader, and somebody would come to him with a problem, any of his guys come to him and like, boss, we got this issue. And his response always, without fail, was always good. Like, we have a problem. Good. And then you flip your mind into, okay, that's there. Then it's, if the problem, like, nothing we can do about that. Good. Let's figure out how we can get better from this or grow from this, or,
right.
how do we turn that into something that's positive? And that mindset is, I think it's a very ubiquitous thing in your industry, probably more so than others, because you and your peers, I mean, forever have had to have, to some level, that type of, like, you're just dealing with all kinds of fires, like whether they're personnel or literal or, all kinds of stuff, and just having to just go, okay, well, here's how we're going to roll with this. And then the pandemic hits, boom, and you just get out of nowhere. And I see everybody, and I feel so fortunate to serve who we serve, because, we just serve independent operators. We don't have any big chains or anything like that. So we're just watching people like you all over the country who are just figuring it out, and staying as positive as they can and trying to lead by example. And it's been such an inspiring thing to see. It really is. And, I've learned a lot personally from that. And hopefully we have as a business as well. But it's really just, I love talking to y'all, Cyrus. That's why I love doing this podcast. I'll do it as long as we're doing this, because, man, I learn so much from y'all every time I talk to you and folks like you. It's super inspiring, man. So just know that you really make a difference. And there's a lot of people that listen to this. So, the message you bring to this goes, travels far and wide.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, you guys are providing a great service, and going through what you guys went through. Again, it's every business has its challenges, and I personally took the lesson of being fortunate enough to continue to be able to work through that, survive, pivot, adjust, and still be here. Unfortunately, many of my counterparts in this industry, didn't make it. A lot of small businesses didn't make it, or weren't fortunate enough to be able to make a pivot or adjustment, or a landlord wasn't, friendly enough to work with them. I have another friend who lost his business, one of his businesses, because the landlord was just a flat out, nope, 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 you got to pay rent. I don't care. No, no, no. And just literally took this guy to court. And, the judge says, hey, unfortunately, the law is the law, but you're just unethical. So while I've got a rule in your favor, I just think you're an unethical business person. That obviously doesn't do my friend anything, because, it is what it is. But, I've been fortunate enough, and I think a lot of people have, is to make it. So I think we've got to continue to look, how do we take whatever lessons are learned and how do we just continue to pay it forward and continue to grow, get people to work, create opportunities, and just, do the work that we do. So it's
How's
been my
everything?
mentality all along.
How is yeah, man. How is everything over in Vietnam?
So Vietnam, they shut down before everybody. Then, like everywhere else, COVID eventually made it there. Didn't have access to vaccine, whereas people there were ready to be vaccinated. They wanted to get open, so they had a pretty rough go of it, and for a lot rougher than here. You don't hear about it, but there's families that I know that both parents pass, and then you've got young kids who then it's in an orphanage, but the orphanage is just a tent kind of in the middle of basically nowhere, and everybody's trying to do their best. The one thing that I think the Vietnamese have is being kind of more of that, Eastern old world culture, as they collapse onto the family very quickly.
Yeah.
So, hey, you don't have anything, everybody moves into one house, and we're fine with that, and we'll make a go of this together. So I think they've navigated. Vaccination rate now is pretty high in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, and I know they're working through the provinces. So they're fairly open in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi. There are some early hour restrictions, but everything is getting back to normal. And then the kind of outlying cities are starting to open. We're still closed because we have a tourist-driven model, and that city is very, very heavily reliant on tourism. Um, they've got the Lunar New Year coming up, and we're thinking we'll be able to reopen probably closer to summer. Things calm down a bit. That's kind of what everybody's projecting there. But
Hmm.
north and south open, kind of the central is like slowly opening, and tourism is starting to be let in if you're fully vaccinated.
Do they have the same labor issues over there, or is that?
No, and I try to have those conversations with my partners too. Is like, you know, it's kind of the idea of we're living in the future, right? So let's telegraph the things that we're experiencing now, whether it's supply chain issues or things like that. I was like, start mapping that out and get ahead of it. I don't think they will experience the same labor issues just because it's a developing country and everybody is looking for an opportunity to continue to grow. We can get into the brass tacks of people not wanting to go back because either they're making money with crypto or they got used to just sitting on their rear end or whatever it is. I don't know that it's probably a combination of a bunch of those things. But I think in a country like that where it's developing and people are really looking to kind of make it to the middle class, that why work one job when you can work two, right? If you can sit at home and trade crypto and then go to work, you're probably going to do that because you want to be able to lift yourself up. So I don't think they'll experience that. Supply chain issues are for sure because that's a global thing, right? So
Yeah.
comes the reopening and getting food and drink, because some stuff is obviously spirits are all imported. A lot of like beef is imported, various produce is imported. So if you're having issues in those countries that are exporting, then you're going to have they're going to experience the same issues.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who's been sitting around making money on crypto, but they may be changing their mind over the last
Oh
week.
yeah, yeah. There's a market correction there for sure.
Much needed. I was a fan of crypto for the most part, but boy, I tell you, it made me realize this ransomware thing. Like, it's how you have to pay them, and you can't. There's just almost no way to trace it. So it's really opened up that the FBI was talking to us about it, and it's just you're going to see a lot more of that now because it's so easy for them to extract money from people, and like they're
Yeah,
taking the like the transactional risk is almost gone, whereas like
right.
buyers or old ways you'd have to do that, so they can kind of deploy this at scale now globally, and just they're running like tons of these things
Oh,
all the
it's like
time.
pay me in Dogecoin, then I change it to Shiba Inu, then it makes it over to a crypto, and then or to
Oh,
Bitcoin, and then from the Bitcoin I buy an NFT, then I sell it 4 times and go back. Like you said, by the time it's tracked down. It's like the scene out of those movies where they're doing a trace and they're trying to bounce it and then it just disappears, right? So,
Yeah.
it is easy. I think, obviously, I think governments eventually get into digital currency. It's just the way that everything's
Yeah.
moving. My concern and issue with it, like everything else, um, we're at the .com stage. Every idea is not a good idea, right? So it's becoming very speculative, and
Yeah.
people think just because you're making money that it's a great tool. The music's going to stop at some point. Not saying, I think it's with us forever, but the music's going to stop, and then some people aren't going to have a seat, and then we'll kind of like
Right.
distill it down to what it needs to be, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah.
I could see that happening. It's just the idea of speculation. I hear people talking about crypto that I'm like, do you really have a grasp of that yet? I don't think you have a grasp of it. So it's a little bit scary because that actually can affect the whole economy, honestly, at this point.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, my buddy made $1 million just sitting there. Just like, well, if he didn't get rid of it, he probably made almost nothing now. But yeah, it's an interesting time, man. It's really weird, how, I mean, we've always kind of felt like, we're sort of minimalist with technology around here. We're not just constantly adding, we just enough to do what you need to do and get out of the way. But boy, the ability for people to plug some keys into a keyboard now and just create havoc is, I mean, like our thing was small, relatively speaking, of course, but you start thinking about like power grids and things like that, and then you got
Right.
just massive chaos.
Well, when you get into that's a group of kids who are working off of or young adults working off of computers who just have a little bit of coding know-how and then access to whether it be the dark web or whatever the tools they're using. And then you take that as like a drop in the bucket and then look at, state sponsored activities, that it's like it becomes an industry, right? So this is one of your arms of industry. Then what are your resources are unlimited.
Well,
And that's
I tell you, man, the thing that I brought this up in part because I talked to restaurant owners that have been hit, and I'm like, well, how did you get hit? There's a guy, he owns about 10 restaurants and in the middle of the country, and 3 months ago, they got into his QuickBooks through some back door that was inadvertently left open by a consultant 10 years ago. They get in, they grab his investors' personal financial statements. They email them to the guy and they say, if you don't pay us, we're going to expose these online for all the world to see. So what do? Like, you pay them, I mean, they started with some crazy number. It was just, but I tell you what, they negotiate because they want to get paid. And so he paid them. Like, I mean, I heard multiple stories of this. I'm like, God, they're just going after any. But my point is, like, for you and anybody listening, like, just be aware that there are people out there right now trying to find any bit of information they can get their hands on and, leverage it some
Oh
way.
yeah, you're seeing it on Instagram. I've got friends who are getting hit with these attacks. Their Instagrams are getting taken over, and then they are, asking people for money. I just got one yesterday from a chef that I had messaged a while ago during the pandemic about doing a pop-up, and then I see a message come across, send me your phone number, let's talk. And then didn't get a chance to reply to it during the day, and then I inadvertently went to the profile, and then the profile was gone. So I was like, okay, that was somebody got into her account and then was probably trying to get my number so they could send me a text. I would click on it, and then it would be, down the rabbit hole.
Oh,
But you literally, yeah, you got to look at it. I mean, I was sitting with my buddy. He owns a bunch of Ben and Jerry's, and we're watching football on Sunday. He's like, I just got a text from Audi of Beverly Hills asking me to come drop my car off. He's like, funny thing is, and they're saying click here to like schedule the time for the drop off service. He's like, I don't own an Audi. So it's crazy. You never know.
Well,
And
okay,
with
so
restaurants, we've got credit cards and all that, so they're always looking.
speaking of football, LA Rams, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, all around that, all the articles are saying it, and I actually agree. Best weekend of football in probably like 20 years, honestly.
I got
It
so
was,
lucky because I don't think I've watched all 4 games. I mean, I may not have ever watched all 4 games, and it was a
right.
random weekend where it worked out, and I was like, well, I'll see that game, and I watched all four. It was incredible. But
Yeah,
I'm
no, it was,
the Rams, man. Aaron
yeah.
Donald, that guy's a beast. God,
Oh
he's
man, we've got a good look. Niners, obviously, this is going to be a good rematch. So
yeah.
they pulled that one out of the hat. Even the game with the Rams, looking at the Bucks, that was nail biter. But I
Oh,
think it's going to be
wow.
very interesting with Cincinnati here. This should be an interesting week. This is going to be a good weekend
It is going to
too.
be. Yeah. Well, listen, I won't keep you much longer, but so tell me again, when does your new concept open?
So it's called Camphor, or Camphor, Camphor. We are shooting to open February 15th, or friends and family, probably like the 12th, 13th, or 14th, 15th. We were hoping to make Super Bowl weekend, but because obviously it's in LA, but that's not going to happen. And then we're looking to actually softly launch February 17th or 18th, as long as the friends and family goes well. And like I said, we're at the staffing issue right now. We've got the menu's done. They're working through the drink menu. We've got everything. We just need cooks right now. So we're getting some talent, but we don't have the depth on our roster that we need right now to be, we want to knock it out of the park. So it's a little bit scary at that point. Is you have this great concept and idea, and you got to execute it at a certain level, and you need to execute it in volume to cover the cost. And so we need those players on the team. So
Yeah.
we're looking.
If you're in LA and you're in that world, where is it going to be?
We're in the arts district, so we're taking over one of my old spaces and converting it to a whole new concept, new team. Pretty stoked.
Awesome, awesome, man. Well, I'll let you go. I know you're a busy guy. I appreciate it. This is our first podcast episode in, like, I don't know, gosh, probably since November. I just kind of wind it down for the holidays and expected to kick off the year running, and that got delayed. But so thank you for doing this, man. It's fun to get back to it, and it's good to see you. You've been always so supportive of us at Schedule Fly, so thank you for that very much from all of us here. And good luck with the opening, man. I hope you guys find the right team. I'm sure you will, but keep after it, man. Love the
No,
positive vibes, my friend.
absolutely. I mean, thank you guys for your support. You guys are a great tool for all of us out here. And I know a lot of restaurateurs like myself, when I didn't get the crib sheet and then I went to go log on, I'm like, shoot, how do I text all my employees? Do I have their number saved? Like, what's going on? This has been my lifeline for communicating with the staff. So, I know you guys are happy to be back, and thank you for bringing us back, but we're here to support. And, on the flip side is, no matter at what level of success or whatever you're doing, you're like every other restaurateur, pulling over in my car to have a little fireside chat with you. And then I'm back to the other million things that people never see us do. So,
All right, we'll get back at it, Cyrus. Good to see you, my friend.
all right. Good to see you too.
All right,
Welcome
take care.
back. Thank you.
Thank you. All
Bye.
right.